Okay, so today is the second video in my series highlighting the Canadian teams heading into the draft lottery. Now, last week I interviewed my friend Kyle, who's an Ottawa Senators fan, and interestingly enough, Kyle lost a bet last year to today's guest when his Senators lost in 6 games to the Montreal Canadiens. Today I'm joined by Montreal Canadiens fan Niles. Thanks for being here, Niles.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Just while I'm on the subject of Kyle, I really don't understand the concept of being a vegetarian. One of my proudest moments as a father was one day when we finished eating breakfast and my daughter looked at me and said, "Daddy, I need more bacon." Now, Kyle's not here today, so he can't defend himself, so thought I could get away with that. Anyway, let's get right into it. How about you start by telling me, when did you become a Montreal Canadiens fan?
If memory serves me correct, I've been a Montreal Canadiens fan for 30 years, almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. It would have been, I believe 1987 is the first year that I became a Habs fan. Mm-hmm. And that was mostly because of a good friend of mine was a Montreal fan. Mm-hmm. And as well as I was a big sticker collector back in the day, and I had the 1986 OPG sticker album with Patrick Waugh on the front after the Montreal Canadiens had won the Cup. I believe it was for the 23rd time at mm-hmm. that point. So that was, I guess, the creation of my Montreal fandom. Throughout the years, I've done lots of things as a Montreal Canadiens fan. I've mm-hmm. traveled to Montreal to see a game at the Bell Centre. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that was the only game I went to, and it was against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Ty Domi scored in overtime, which is a big kicker because I was there with a bunch of Leafs fans. Yep. And yeah, they were very happy as I was the only Habs fan in the group. So the rest of the night was a little torturous, but that was a really great time. I've also been to the Hockey Hall of Fame to see the Stanley Cup and to see pretty much, I'd say about 25% of the Cup complete or covered with Montreal Canadiens names, and yep. that was a pretty cool thing to see. Another highlight of being a Montreal Canadiens fan was my wife surprised me on our wedding day with a Montreal Canadiens garter that my mother-in-law had made for her, mm-hmm. and yeah, that was pretty cool. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So one more quick one. As you said, Montreal's probably the most historic. Well, they are the most historic franchise in the NHL. Plenty of players to pick from, but who would you say is your all-time favorite Hab?
My all-time favorite Hab would definitely be Patrick Waugh, and I think that's just because he was the one player that inspired me to be a Habs fan. Mm-hmm. He was part of the 2 Stanley Cup winning teams that I remember, mm-hmm. and he was just a very entertaining personality. Not only a great goalie, but if say the puck went off the post, he'd thank his goal post and would always be talking to his posts, and just odd movements, just to keep limber, and as well as career after Montreal. Mm-hmm. He just turned out to be one of the greater goalies in NHL history.
Absolutely can't go wrong with Patrick Waugh. Now let's get to this season. Montreal had a bizarre season. I know that I think at the beginning of December they were in first place, sole possession of first place, and then the wheels fell off. You would know better than I would. Just explain to me what happened and why they missed the playoffs.
For sure. It was truly a lost season, I think. As soon as Carey Price got injured, mm-hmm. that seemed to be the first domino that fell. That was just a terrible season for Montreal when it came down to it. Mm-hmm. It seemed like they were going to be okay when Price was first injured and Condon took over, and the team, they seemed to do well. Mm-hmm. And then they hit some adversity with some injuries. As well as I think that they were just exposed for a team that didn't have more than one scoring line. Mm-hmm.
Did Price first get hurt against the Oilers? Because I remember they played them in October, and that was the game the Oilers came back and won late in the third. And I think he went to make a save on Pouliot, and he got up kind of gingerly. And was that where he first got hurt?
I think what happened, just from everything I've listened to on the radio and seen on TV, mm-hmm. was that he actually stepped on a puck in warm-up in the Edmonton game and then played through that, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't play after that game mm-hmm. for quite a while. And there was a lot of mystery about the injury throughout the whole season. That was one of the frustrating parts of being a Habs fan, was mm-hmm. the lack of communication that the team was actually telling people about the injury. Him coming back, I believe it was in December,
Yeah.
November, December, in a game against the Rangers, and I don't think he even played the whole game, and that was it. That was the last time we saw him play. Yeah, I think that if they were maybe a little more straightforward with what was wrong with him, and the team, even the team didn't know what was wrong with him, so if they had more of a clear direction as to what was going on. But like I said, that was just one of the few things that happened this year that it was probably the biggest issue, the biggest issue with the team. I think that poor coaching really surfaces well. Like, if you have Carey Price, it covers a lot of problems with the team, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a coach that's more of a defensive style, and you need to score goals because you don't have Carey Price in net, then that really doesn't help the team.
Yep.
Key injuries to Gallagher, so defensive injuries, Petrie and Bolu went down, and then later on in the season, PK Subban went down. But at that point, the season was lost. But yeah, I think that the Habs can make a lot of improvements. One positive this year was the emergence of Alex Galchenyuk as the first line center. Finally, after it seemed like anyone that could play center on the Canadiens got hurt, then the coach was forced to play him.
Yep.
And that really showed the chemistry, the really good chemistry that he and Pacioretty had together. So definitely looking forward to a top line of Pacioretty, Galchenyuk, and Gallagher next season.
Yeah, I had Galchenyuk in my keeper pool. I've had him for a couple of years, and I lost patience. He had 2 goals in 18 or 19 games. I was like, that's enough. I traded him for Jacob Silfverberg. And then, he scored like almost 30 goals the rest of the way. And then I dropped Silfverberg and picked up Zach Kassian. And Silfverberg wound up with 20. Anyway, it was a mess. That's a whole other story for another time.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Subban. Now, I'm just going to offer my opinion real quick on Subban.
Sure.
I love him. I think he is an excellent hockey player. I think he's an even better person. The stuff that he does in the community in Montreal. The one criticism that I have of him, and it's sort of double-sided, I love that he's an emotional player, but I think that as a leader on the Habs, he needs to control that emotion sometimes. Because I've seen him out on the ice. I remember a couple years ago in the playoffs, there was a call that didn't go in his favor, and it was sort of almost like a tantrum, right?
Yep.
And I think that when you're a leader, the other guys on the team are looking at you, they see the way you're responding, and then they gravitate to responding the same as you, rather than maybe if he's a little more composed, the rest of the team takes a deep breath and they're like, yeah, this is okay. Let's just play through it. Let's forget about it. That's my opinion on PK. Now, you chatted with me the other day about the leadership in Montreal.
Right.
Can you just tell me a little bit more about that? Because that was something I hadn't really thought of when their season sort of went off the rails. So can you just tell me a little bit about the leadership in Montreal?
Yeah, so a big thing with the leadership this year was that Max Pacioretty was voted by the team to be the captain. And I think it was a good decision because he is a very level-headed type of person. But one of the mistakes Montreal made was they got rid of a lot of their veteran players. I believe it was last season or the season before. And Pacioretty doesn't have those players to talk to, and get guidance from on a regular basis. So you've kind of got him there on his own. There are some older players, but they're more kind of the non-leadership guys. The quiet guys, the Markovs, the Plekanec, those types of guys who are really good on the ice, but maybe not so good in the locker room. PK Subban, I think, is an amazing person. He gave, I think it was $10 million to the hospital in Montreal, and that's just amazing. More hockey players should do that. If he puts a puck over the glass and he hits somebody, he has them to the next game, and maybe that's a regular thing with NHL players, but, Subban, you just hear about it more because Subban's a superstar, right? And I think that, and I don't know if you're going to get into any trade rumors about PK Subban, maybe, possibly, but I think that if Montreal was to trade a player like Subban, they would never get that person back. So whether or not there's some issues in the locker room because he's a bigger than life personality, and a lot of hockey players aren't used to that. I think that he's just one of those players where you have to get used to that in order to get that type of player on the team. And he is a tremendously skilled defenseman.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe playing in the wrong system for the wrong coach. I'm not a big fan of Michel Therrien. I'm not sure if many fans are at this point, but I think that if we got a coach with maybe a more modern, newer philosophy, that the team would definitely benefit, as well as PK Subban.
No, I agree completely. Okay, so we've talked about the Habs lost season, a little bit of your background. Now it's time to run the draft lottery simulator. Just before we start, I did this with Kyle as well. What's your worst case scenario for this lottery?
Worst case scenario would be, I'm sorry to say, is that if Edmonton wins again, because
That's totally fair.
it just shows that the system's a little bit flawed, that Edmonton would be able to get that many number one picks. I'm not a huge fan of the Leafs or the Sens because they're close in my division.
Yeah.
But probably worst case is if Boston won, because I'm a Habs fan, and that's probably the last thing Habs fan would want is a Boston number one pick.
Yeah.
Especially when they came so close to making the playoffs.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
my dad's a Bruins fan, so I'm probably not going to send him this video. And then what's your best case scenario?
well, best case scenario is obviously if Montreal wins, and they'd be able to add some depth scoring. Not even depth scoring, maybe like second line scoring is what we're looking for. So that would be dream ideal situation.
So yeah, you can go ahead and run it, and just like with Kyle, you can run all three if you want, or you can just take a minute after you run one.
Okay. Oh wow, there we go. Yeah, that definitely wouldn't make me so happy, but a lot of my Leafs friends back in Ontario would be ecstatic with this.
Sure.
Okay,
Jets.
second, the Jets. See, I don't mind that because the Jets are just one of those teams that I think that they deserve a break. At this point, they're in a tough Western Conference division, and if this can help them compete with St. Louis, Chicago, Nashville, Dallas, like those types of teams, then good for them.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I'm going to be talking to my friend Tom about the Jets in the next video, so I don't want to get too much into that, but I agree with your thoughts completely.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see who gets number 3. Come on, Montreal. Oh, Boston.
Oh,
That's
boy.
what I get. That's what I get. So two of the teams I mentioned that I didn't want getting the top 3, but what are you going to do? If it were up to me, changing the NHL lottery system would be that if you don't make the playoffs, you have an equal shot of getting the first pick, one ball in the hat. As well, I would like them to actually pick the top 14 picks out of the hat, so then no one tanks. It would be a great system, and then everyone would try really hard to make the playoffs every year, and there'd be no repercussion from the draft lottery. So you entertain the fans, and you have the chance at the first pick overall.
No, and I agree with that. I've seen the other one suggested is accumulated points once you're eliminated.
Right.
So it's sort of like a reverse draft lottery where you try to win your way to that top pick. But I have no problem with that either. They do need to revise it. I think they're going to revise it if the Leafs don't win the lottery.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because that was their whole purpose in playing this season was finishing last. But no, I totally agree with you on that. And I think Montreal stayed, or would they have been bumped? Boston would have pushed them down one spot from 9th to 10th.
I'm sure there's a French-Canadian prospect at number 10 that they'll be able to get. So
that would be great. And Montreal's been lacking that. I know they have the defenseman there.
Beaulieu.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as I know, I think he's actually from Ontario with a French name.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, we've got Desharnais.
There you go.
All right.
Okay, well, I can't thank you enough for sitting down and chatting with me today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Great. So that's it for the Montreal Canadiens video. I will be talking to my friend Tom Stevenson later this week about the Winnipeg Jets. I'll see you then.